Welcome to DigitalK.
Conde Nast is a global company. I work within the US business of the company, and we have 18 different publications, actually now 16. We just sold 2 of them, Golf Digest and Brides. The, I guess, most popular, probably well-known brands, at least for you guys, would be Wired, Vogue, GQ, maybe Vanity Fair, Architectural Digest, what else? Bon Appetit, maybe? Glamour as well. So we have lots of different brands in many different categories.
Great, thank you. You joined about 3 years ago. What did you do before?
So my career has been mostly in television on the digital side. So I was at NBCU working on the Olympics, as well as really the introduction of streaming of full episodes when we introduced our player, which now everyone uses. But really learning about those behaviors, why consumers wanted to stream full episodes, how we could make those products better. Then I was at Vivo, which is a large music video company. Most of our videos were on YouTube. And then Discovery Communications, so Discovery Channel, which is pretty global as well, Animal Planet, etc.
Great, and now in the wonderful world of publishing.
That's right.
Great, well, it's great to have you here. We're going to have a conversation about your activities over there. You oversee marketing, research, and analytics. I guess we're going to be mostly talking about research and analytics, given that it's data-driven content development is the title. But I want to touch on the marketing aspect first, because I'm a slightly smaller publisher myself, and my marketing strategy pretty much limits itself to putting a logo on a T-shirt.
It's very effective.
So I guess the question for you is, what does marketing look like at Conde Nast?
Yeah, so I think the way that we think of marketing is really how we reach our consumers and how we tell our brand stories. And especially today, what that story is and what those brands mean, it evolves really every single day. Consumer needs change. We listen to those needs. We understand where we have opportunities, where we see white spaces, where we see a great fit with our brands. And so we, pivot a bit. And so we're always thinking about the meaning of the brand. We have mission statements, and those change fairly frequently, whereas probably before they would stay for 3 to 5 years, right? And now we're really looking at them every few months to make sure that we're still relevant to consumers. So how we talk to our consumers, I really think of everything as marketing. So there's marketing in terms of paid spend and paid social and SEM and advertising campaigns. But the way that we share our logos on our sites, the design of our sites, the flow of our sites, how our newsletters look, and what they say, all of that is really part of what I think of as our marketing and our positioning and that connection with consumers. So we have kind of the tactics, and then we have kind of the engagement or how we kind of create that loyalty, or kind of the 2 sides of marketing, which is more the organic or earned side of things.
Great. Can you maybe elaborate on some of the tools and techniques that you use to market your brands?
Sure. So, a lot of what we do is organic. Our brands have fairly large names. They're very well known. Our awareness is high. We actually just got our brand tracker, our brand health tracker back. So it's really about how we signal a change to the brand. So Vanity Fair is a great example of that. Vanity Fair, we had an editor-in-chief who's very famous and well-known in the U.S. I don't know if you know him. His name's Graydon Carter. Do you know Graydon Carter? Okay. He's a really famous personality in the U.S., and we just shifted to a different editor-in-chief after a really long time, probably about 20 years. And so telling that new story, we do that through multiple different methods. So, SEO, search engine optimization, is something we focus on a lot, right? What are the keywords and terms that we're using a lot? We try to be really intentional about that and how we message that also to Google and where our authority lies, right, through our content, and how we build that content both in the back-end product as well as how we write about things, what our headlines look like, what keywords are in our content. We also have a large newsletter strategy, and that to me is a really, really important area of growth. It always sounds a little bit outdated. It did to me when I first got to Conde, but I really see it as a huge opportunity, and it's the way, and you've seen a lot of companies kind of rise up only in the newsletter space as a really important way to connect with people and how they want to be connected with today. And that's where we have a ton of data. We're able to really personalize the content within those newsletters and do a lot to create engagement around the brand. So that's a huge marketing vehicle for us. That's also the number one referral for our subscriptions business. So when we look to convert people to paid, newsletters are really the main way that we do that. That's where our conversion rates are the highest. And then, of course, our social presence is large as well, though shrinking because of Facebook and many of the changes that they've made, and we can talk about that as well. But those are really our kind of organic levers, and then of course we have paid social that we do. We do things through Snapchat and other social channels that we've been testing out as well, mostly to drive subscriptions there.
Just one more question about the marketing. Is there a big difference in the way that you market the print titles versus the online titles, or difference in fashion, tech, lifestyle, which is the three big topics that you cover across the magazine? Are there big difference in the way you market?
Yeah, I mean, I think that with tech, we do a lot more with like partnerships to get the brand out there. We do some interesting events in that space. And that's a really great way to get people more connected with the brands. In the fashion space, Instagram is very large for us. Vogue, I think, has 25 million Instagram followers right now. So huge presence there. And that platform obviously lends itself to fashion, the imagery that we have there. So we do think a lot about what's more appropriate for each of our brands, where those audiences live, and how we can best engage with them. And so we do have distinct strategies for each one of our brands.
Great. Is video a big part of it?
So video is interesting. In our company, video is a separate department within the organization. And that's really because, and I think this is a struggle with any company that's kind of a legacy business, and all of a sudden you're introducing a new form factor that people in the core of the business aren't as comfortable with. They don't have as much experience with. And so with many of those things, we bring in kind of a group of experts within that space. So in this case, video. So people who really understand what works on YouTube, for example, which, a core writer on Vanity Fair who's been writing for print for 40 years isn't going to necessarily understand or know what's going to resonate in that space. And so we developed kind of, I think, at the time, what was thought of as kind of an incubator within the larger organization to really be these experts and really understand how to translate what our brands mean into videos that would resonate with consumers. And certainly there's been more of a blending of those businesses, but we still do have a lot of video initiatives that are a bit separate from the core of the business. So my team, for example, doesn't work as closely on video, although, more recently, obviously understanding what's resonating from a text or photo-based perspective and using that to inform the video production that you're doing certainly has a lot of benefits, especially as we look to grow that business. That's definitely the largest area of growth for us, both in terms of what consumers want and demand, and then obviously the advertising and the revenue has followed that. So we have introduced some OTT channels recently for Bon Appetit and for Wired. We have GQ coming up as well.
Great. We're going to talk about data a bit. Jeremiah has mentioned the word data quite a lot in his keynote speech prior to this. But before we start, maybe give us some numbers to give us an idea of the overall audience and the size of the overall audience of Conde Nast.
Sure. So in the US, we have about 100 million monthly unique visitors. That's according to ComScore. We use ComScore for that, and I know ComScore is global as well, so you guys hopefully are familiar with it. We use that because it deduplicates across the platform. So we obviously have a lot of people who visit us on our sites as well as on our mobile apps, mobile sites, et cetera. And so that allows us to do some deduplication there. So very large audience across all of our brands. We also look at the duplication between the brands, and some brands are more closely connected than others. So like a Glamour and a Allure are going to be a lot closer than a Glamour and a Wired are going to be, for example. But even there, I think one of the most interesting parts of my job is finding those kind of unnatural or not logical connection points between the brands, which we do a lot of through our tent poles. So, for example, the Met Gala, which is a large event that we do for Vogue every year. It's a charity event, but it's also a place where Vogue makes a lot of its revenue for the year. And it's fashion. It's really about fashion. But we find some really interesting points, for example, for Pitchfork, which is our music brand, right? Because we have music stars who are there. We might have an interesting health story for one of the celebrities that we would use for Self. And we think a lot about that. I think it's one of the benefits of my team. My team is what I call centralized but embedded. So we kind of have tentacles in all of the brands and teams that are dedicated to those brands. They understand those brands' voice and tone and how to bring the marketing and analytics tools to those brands in a really smart way that's specific and customized to those brands, right? But then is also able to be thoughtful about our cross-brand approach and thoughtful about best practices that we take across the business. And so we plan around those tentpole events to be really thoughtful about using data to understand each angle on that topic and each area of interest for different brands that you might not have thought of. GQ, for example, did really well in the last election cycle in the US, which isn't really a brand you think of for that, but was a huge opportunity for us. And we did a lot, kind of growing that vertical, just seeing some early results in the data.
Great. You also mentioned yesterday to me that you have 9 million email addresses, something like that?
We do, yeah.
But I'm wondering, what's the kind of data that you want from your customers? What do you ask for and what do you actually hope to get from them?
Yeah, so we are, I would say, really lucky, and I can't remember, the morning speakers were exceptional. And one of them was speaking about, owning your data. I think it was actually Jeremiah, owning your data and the importance of owning your data. And that resonated with me so much because I came from a world where we owned almost nothing. So in the TV space, we had a middleman for the most part, which were the cable providers, right? So the cable providers have their customers. They collect all of the data. We sell our content to them. Customers pay a sub fee to get, our content. But we don't actually understand directly, besides third parties, at a raw level, who that person is, what they're consuming, how they move across shows. And that was always a huge challenge for us. Number one, for understanding how to program better, but number two, how to sell effectively, right, with advanced targeting capabilities on site. At Conde, because of that relationship that we have with subscribers, we have a ton of data. So we have a ton of email addresses. We have a ton of physical mailing addresses as well, right? And so besides the data that we ask for from our users, which I can talk about, we also can append a lot of data to that information, right? And use that data to provide a better experience for the users, which is really at least my goal. Obviously, we use it for advertising as well. But for me, I want to understand how to create a more personalized, narrow, focused experience for different segments of our audiences. And so from our email, we ask actually very little. We'll ask gender and age. We've talked about asking for more. We don't want to, there is a trade-off and kind of a balance between asking for too much and getting people to get a little skittish and say, you know what, it's not worth me giving this information away, versus a really easy experience where they're able to just seamlessly join. So we do kind of think about those trade-offs and even do some A/B testing around that. But we do kind of glean a lot of information, and we have everything connected where when a newsletter person comes to our sites, we understand everything that they're doing, right? Everything that they're consuming, what type of content they like, when they visit that content, right? And so we can create very niche or micro segments out of that information to really understand their intention and their interests, which might be related to demographics, but it might just be, more interest or attitudinally based.
So the research that you do, and from my limited experience working for a number of publications, marketing sales had always, it had to be separate from editorial always. Yep. What's that like at Conde Nast? Do you have regular contact with the chief editors or editorial staff in general?
Yeah, so I am right now part of the editorial organization. So I report into Anna Wintour, who is our Chief Content Officer, and I work really closely with the editors in chief. So, for me, my, I guess, main mission or goal and for my team is to be that voice of customer, to share feedback with the editors around what we're seeing, both in terms of the marketplace, our competitors, what our consumers are saying, and then how the content that we actually produce is resonating and how we could pivot. The sales side of the business is certainly interested in that information as well. So I've always found that the best things to share with our advertising partners is not just ROI and return on ad sales, which obviously they're looking at, and measurement is super important, but also kind of giving them a view into what's important to our consumers, helping them understand that 360 view of who our consumers are, why they come to us, how we're different, why we're an important part of their lives. So, Zappos, they were talking about ethnographies or the in-home visits. I love that kind of research as well. Certainly for our editors to see how and where people consume our content, but also for our advertisers, they need to understand the context in which their advertising messaging is displayed and how to hopefully create better advertising for those experiences. So again, that it's better for consumers. So all again in service to consumers.
Sure, thank you. I can't talk to someone from the publishing industry without talking about Facebook. How important is Facebook to Conde Nast in general? And how do you think that will evolve in the future?
Yeah. So I'm trying to think of what official talking points would be on Facebook. So Facebook's a tricky one. It's an important marketing vehicle for us. It's an important way for consumers to get our content. And I think we've always, and really all the companies that I've been at least in terms of philosophy, even if not in action, have felt that we need to be where consumers are. Right, so we can't expect, I talk about this when I was at NBC and NBC.com in 2005, 2004, everyone came to us, right? You were interested in Heroes, which was a show that we had at that time. You would come to NBC.com, you would look at that content, you would understand, the cast, you would watch some videos, etc. Today, in order to reach those same people interested in that show, you have to be on 20 different platforms. Right, and so it's a challenge for me also from a budgeting perspective. It's something I think a lot of the time the executive team doesn't understand how you need so many more people to execute against reaching the same audience that you did previously. And it's a huge challenge in really understanding all of those different platforms. Facebook continues to be important because people continue to go there, right? And people continue to show interest in our content. So we need to be there. So, I have social teams on all of the brands. Facebook is still the place that we get the most of our social traffic. Instagram's growing, certainly, and we've had a lot of success there, especially Instagram stories. But Facebook is still, in terms of the raw numbers, the bulk of the referrals. That being said, the referrals are down significantly. So today, about 10% of our traffic is from social, whereas, a couple of years ago, it was about 30%. So we've seen a steep decline. We've made up for that. Our audience continues to grow. We've made up for that predominantly in search, best practice, and also our newsletter initiatives, which has been tough. Facebook changes their algorithm every 5 minutes. I mean, people make a big deal about it every 6 months or year when they make some huge announcement and everyone gets scared and we have a bunch of meetings and I'm like, this happens to us every single day. And we have to adjust and we have to figure out, as soon as you've kind of figured out what they're looking for, they change it again. And I think, I want to believe they do that because it's in the best interest of the consumer. Sometimes I personally question that and wonder if it's more related to revenue for them. But we do, have to kind of figure that out and break the code a little bit. And we're constantly having sessions on that. We have someone who just looks at Facebook and how they're changing things and what's being prioritized and what's not. And we see one category doing better than another category. What is that signal telling us? So that's, just trying to get into the mind or the machine of Facebook is a full-time job, but we still need to do it.